You know that moment, the one where your body knows it's done before your mind can catch up. It's not loud, there's no explosion, just a stillness, a deep, grounded silence that whispers, enough. That moment, that's power. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, that power isn't just healing, it's revolutionary. See, a narcissist doesn't build connection the way healthy people do. They build dependency. They offer just enough attention, just enough approval to make you question your own instincts. And every time you bend, shrink, or silence yourself to keep the peace, they win. Not because they love you, but because control, not connection, is their currency. But when you walk away, really walk away, you take something they can't replace: your attention, your presence, your willingness to stay and make sense of the madness. That's what they feed on. And when it's gone, the echo of your absence becomes louder than any words you ever spoke. They don't fear your anger, they expect it, they feed off it. What they can't process, what truly undoes them, is indifference, silence. The decision to reclaim your energy without needing to prove a thing. Walking away isn't about punishing them, it's about honoring you. It says, I'm not willing to abandon myself to be understood by someone who profits from my confusion. And let me tell you, that kind of self-trust, that kind of boundary, it doesn't just threaten the narcissist. It dismantles the very illusion they've built, that they are essential, irreplaceable, all-powerful. Suddenly, they're just a person you no longer choose to explain yourself to, a person who no longer has the keys to your nervous system. We often walk into relationships, whether romantic, familial, professional, believing everyone seeks connection at some level. We assume that behind the conflict, the tension, the manipulation, there's a human being who ultimately just wants to be loved, seen, and understood. And for most people, that's true. But with narcissists, the game is different. What they crave is not connection, it's control. A narcissist doesn't form bonds in the traditional sense. They create attachments with a power imbalance baked in. They aren't seeking mutual understanding or emotional intimacy. They're seeking dominance, admiration, and unquestioned authority over how the relationship unfolds. And more importantly, how you see yourself. When a narcissist gives you praise, attention, or affection, it's not coming from a place of unconditional regard. It's a transaction, a hook, something to pull you closer so they can maintain control of your emotional thermostat. 1 minute you're elevated, idealized, made to feel like the most special person in the world. The next you're devalued, discarded, or ignored, not because you changed, but because they needed to reassert control. This isn't love, it's power management dressed up as affection. And what makes it so confusing is that for a while, it can feel like deep connection, that early attention, the intense interest, the way they seem to mirror your dreams, values, and desires. It feels intoxicating, but it's not connection, it's manipulation. They're not bonding with you, they're studying you, figuring out where to press, where to pull, where to leave you guessing. True connection requires vulnerability, mutual respect, and emotional accountability, but a narcissist cannot tolerate vulnerability, not yours and not their own. Instead, they seek to orchestrate your emotions in a way that keeps them in control. Your joy becomes a threat if it doesn't center them. Your pain becomes a tool if it benefits them. Your independence becomes unacceptable if it means they can't steer your decision. So when we say narcissists crave control, not connection, what we're really saying is They don't want a relationship, they want an audience. Someone to reflect back their inflated self-pigage. Someone who won't question the double standards, the gaslighting, the erosion of your own identity. And this is why walking away is so powerful, because it strips away their access to your mind, your heart, and your energy. It ends the performance. And when they lose control, they lose everything. When we think of reclaiming our power, many of us imagine a moment of confrontation, the raised voice, the final word, the truth finally spoken. We picture ourselves standing up, calling them out, laying bare all the harm they've caused. And while that might feel satisfying in theory, it rarely lands the way we hope, especially with a narcissist. Because narcissists aren't wired to hear you. They don't process confrontation as feedback, growth, or even a reckoning. They interpret it as fuel. Confrontation, no matter how honest or justified, gives them exactly what they want. Your attention, your emotion, your energy. It tells them they still matter, that they still have a seat at your emotional table. And perhaps most importantly, it allows them to flip the script, to twist your anger into irrationality, your grief into drama, your pain into a personal attack. You can pour your heart out, recount every betrayal, every manipulation, every moment they made you question your worth, and they will stand there blank-faced or smirking and say something like, "You're overreacting. I never said that. You're so sensitive." That's not a conversation. That's a trap. And walking into it just reaffirms their illusion of power. But silence is a different language entirely. Silence is not passive, it is not weakness, it is not avoidance. When intentional and grounded, silence is a boundary wrapped in stillness. It is an act of choosing yourself without the need for validation. It's saying, I no longer owe you my voice, my clarity, or my pain. Silence takes away the narcissist stage. It denies them the spotlight. It leaves them alone with their echo chamber, no audience, no reaction, no chance to manipulate the narrative. And that absence, that emptiness, it's unbearable for them. The narcissists don't just want control. They want proof of it. They want to see you sweat, break down, second guess, or beg. They need to know they can still push your buttons. So when you don't engage, when you don't explain, when you don't defend yourself, you starve them of the fuel that sustains their ego. Your silence becomes a mirror they can't manipulate. It forces them to confront the very thing they've spent a lifetime running from. Their own lack of power, their own emotional emptiness, their inability to control another person's peace. So no, silence is not just a quiet choice. It is a sacred one. It is a form of self-protection, a declaration of dignity, and it speaks volumes in a language the narcissist cannot rewrite, cannot twist, cannot undo. Sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. There's a moment in every toxic relationship, sometimes loud, sometimes painfully quiet, when you realize the cost of staying is your self-respect. And even then, walking away can feel impossible, because you're not just walking away from a person, you're walking away from the hope that they might finally see you, love you right, or change. But here's the truth. Walking away isn't about giving up on them. It's about choosing not to give up on yourself. In healthy relationships, love is an exchange of mutual care. But with a narcissist, love becomes a performance. You're constantly auditioning for attention, for approval, for permission to feel. And over time, the emotional gymnastics you perform to keep the peace start to rewrite your story. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I deserved that silence. Maybe if I explain it better, they'll finally understand. This is how self-worth erodes, not in a single moment, but slowly in the 1,000 small ways you abandon yourself to be acceptable to someone else. Walking away is the reversal of that abandonment. It is a homecoming. When you walk away, you are telling the world, and more importantly yourself, I am no longer available to people who cannot love me without conditions. I will not keep handing my soul to someone who treats it like it's disposable. It is one of the most radical acts of self-respect you will ever make. And yes, it's terrifying, because walking away often means stepping into a void, into grief, into loneliness, into uncertainty. But that temporary discomfort is nothing compared to the slow death of staying in a place where you are never truly seen. When you walk away from a narcissist, you interrupt a lifelong pattern, perhaps even a generational one, of outsourcing your worth to people who refuse to honor it. You stop begging for crumbs of validation. You stop trying to earn love that should have been offered freely. And in doing so, you begin to heal not just the wounds from that relationship, but every wound that told you love must be proven through pain. Walking away is not weakness, it is clarity. It says, I'm no longer available for manipulation. I am no longer willing to contort myself to be tolerable. I am no longer going to explain my value to someone committed to misunderstanding me. Not just leaving, it's reclaiming. And that shift from please see me to I see myself clearly now is what truly destroys the narcissist. Because their power was never about their strength, it was about your silence, your confusion, your need. When that need is gone, when the confusion clears, when your silence becomes strength, they are no longer powerful. They are exposed, small, ordinary, and left standing alone in the absence of the person who once made them feel important. You. So walk away, not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of reverence for the person you are and the peace you now choose to protect. Narcissists don't fall in love with you, they fall in love with what you reflect back to them. You're not a partner to be cherished, you're a mirror to be managed. And as long as you stay, they can keep their carefully constructed illusion intact. The illusion that they are powerful, desired, irreplaceable, and in control. But when you walk away, that illusion shatters. The narcissist builds their identity on perception, not truth. They curate a false self that looks confident, charming, dominant, even charismatic. And part of that facade relies on keeping people in orbit around them, revolving like planets around their sun. Your presence reinforces the story they're telling the world and themselves that they are worth orbiting. But here's the thing about illusions. They only work as long as no one walks through the smoke. And when you do, when you leave not with a fight, but with calm clarity, when you stop performing, stop pleading, stop trying to fit inside the box they designed for you, you tear a hole in the narrative. You are no longer playing your role in their fantasy. You no longer reflect the version of them they desperately want to believe in, the one who is adored, pursued, worshipped, feared. And for a narcissist, that break in the illusion is not just inconvenient, it's catastrophic. Because now they are forced to confront something they've spent their entire lives avoiding, the truth that they are not as powerful as they pretend, the truth that control is not the same as love, the truth that you can live without them and thrive, the truth that people who truly know them will eventually leave. They may react with rage, or they may pretend they never cared. They may scramble to replace you, quickly inserting someone new into the same role, but none of that is strength. It's panic. It's the frantic effort to patch a hole in a story that no longer holds. Because when you leave, you don't just exit their life, you challenge their entire framework for reality. You become the undeniable proof that their charm isn't endless, their grip isn't unbreakable, and their version of the truth is not the only one. That's the part they cannot tolerate, not the loss of you, but the loss of control over the narrative. And deep down, they know it. They know that someone walking away without screaming, without begging, without needing closure, just walking away and choosing peace, is the most undeniable evidence that their power was always an illusion. You weren't weak, you were generous. You weren't naive, you were hopeful. And now you're awake. And once the illusion is ruptured, it can't be remade. That's what your leaving does. Not just damage, disruption. Not just heartbreak, exposure. Not just silence, clarity. And they don't care what form it takes. Admiration, praise, compliance, even fear or anger. To them, it all counts as fuel. As long as you're emotionally engaged, whether you're defending yourself, pleading for them to understand, or raging against their cruelty, you're feeding the machine. That's why walking away is so much more powerful than arguing. It doesn't just hurt a narcissist, it starves them. See, narcissists are not self-sustaining. Their sense of identity, worth, and superiority depends entirely on external validation. They need people around them, people to admire them, react to them, and most of all, to confirm their importance. Every conversation, every manipulation, every twisted, "I'm sorry you feel that way," it's all designed to keep you engaged, because your engagement equals fuel. So when you stop showing up emotionally, it's not just that you're leaving a relationship, you're cutting off their life source. You stop explaining, you stop justifying, you stop defending, you stop playing the role they assigned you, the fixer, the caretaker, the scapegoat, the audience. And in that silence, they are left with something they can't metabolize. Nothing. No reaction. No access, no ability to provoke. And this is where their mask begins to crack. Because without fuel, the narcissist is exposed for what they truly are: hollow. The grandiosity fades. The control tactics start to feel desperate. The charm wears thin. And the person behind the curtain, the one you once hoped could love you, is revealed not as a villain, but as an empty vessel, terrified of their own insignificance. This is why they often cycle through people so quickly. Once someone stops reacting, once someone sees the pattern, the narcissist must move on to someone new, someone still willing to play the game. But even then, they can't erase the fact that you stopped playing first. You became the proof that they can be left, that they are not untouchable. And this is what truly destroys them. Not the silence, not the walking away, but the fact that you now exist outside of their control. You become the evidence that their power wasn't real, that it only worked as long as you kept giving it to them. Removing the fuel isn't just about detaching, it's an act of liberation. You no longer live on their emotional schedule. You stop asking yourself how to please them, how to fix it, how to be enough. You stop performing and you start healing. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you sit in your own stillness and feel something real. And that peace, that's the one thing they can't imitate, can't chase, can't destroy, because it's yours, and it was never meant to be fuel for anyone else. Power in a relationship isn't always loud. It's not always shouting, controlling bank accounts, or making decisions for someone else. Sometimes it's subtle. It shows up in the way your voice gets quieter around them, in how you hesitate before speaking, in the way you apologize for things that aren't your fault, in the way you shrink. That's how the narcissist wins, not by overpowering you outright, but by training you slowly and consistently to give your power away. Every time you second guess your truth to keep the peace. Every time you downplay your hurt to avoid being called too sensitive. Every time you carry the emotional weight of their outbursts while they walk away clean. These are not isolated incidents, they're strategies. And over time, the narcissist builds a framework where they are always centered, always superior, always in control, and you are small, reactive, disoriented. But when you walk away, something extraordinary happens. The ground shifts because you are no longer the one adjusting, no longer the one reaching, no longer the one explaining your worth to someone who benefits from your confusion. You take back the one thing they've worked so hard to possess, your autonomy. And in doing so, you flip the power dynamic entirely. Suddenly, the person who once seemed so dominant, so in control, is left without their foundation. You were their source of attention, emotional labor, validation, even identity. Without your presence to orbit around, they are unanchored. And while they may scramble, trying to hoover you back in with apologies, false promises, or manipulation, it's too late. Because once you've tasted freedom, once you've stepped outside the emotional fog and remembered who you are, you don't walk back into that cage. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. You begin to understand that their power never came from strength. It came from your willingness to defer, to explain, to fix. And now that willingness is gone. You stop asking, how do I make this work? And you start asking, why was I working so hard to begin with? Stop reacting to their chaos and you start responding to your own needs. And that is power. Not dominance, not revenge, not control, but sovereignty, self-trust, emotional freedom. And the narcissist, they can't access any of it. That shift, that invisible but seismic turning point is what breaks them. Not because you hurt them, but because you stopped needing them. You stopped buying the lie that your value was tied to their approval. And in the quiet strength of your departure, a new power is born. One that isn't based on fear or manipulation, but on truth, choice, and self-respect. You rise not above them, but beyond them. And that's a power dynamic they can never recreate because it's one they never controlled to begin with. It's always yours. It's the moment you stop chasing closure from someone who profits from your confusion. It's the quiet reclaiming of a voice that has been silenced, distorted, and doubted for far too long. It's the sacred act of saying, I will no longer negotiate with someone who does not see my humanity. And make no mistake, walking away will shake them. It will rupture their illusion of control. It will silence the chaos they used to orchestrate. It will expose the emptiness behind their ego. It will remind them, in a way no confrontation ever could, that their power over you was borrowed, not earned. But more importantly than what it does to them is what it does for you. It shifts the narrative. It recenters your worth. It teaches your nervous system that peace is not only possible, it's your new baseline. As it opens the door to a life no longer dictated by emotional survival, but by conscious, courageous choice. Because you were never too much. You were never the problem. You were simply asking to be loved in a place where love was only used as leverage. And now, you're done performing. You're done explaining. You're done waiting for someone to become who they promised they were. You're walking away not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You care about your boundaries. You care about your mental clarity. You care about your peace. And most of all, you care about yourself. Deeply, fiercely, and without apology. That's what truly destroys the narcissist. Not the loss of you, but the rise of you. And that rise, it's only just beginning.